Hello, everyone. Welcome to English Insights. Today, we will explore the life of Karl Marx, a man whose ideas changed the world. He was not born rich or powerful. He was a student who loved reading, asking questions, and thinking deeply about society. But his thoughts later became the base of many political movements and revolutions. How did a young man from Germany become one of the most famous thinkers in history? What made his ideas so powerful that people still talk about them today? This story is not only about politics and philosophy, it is also a great chance to improve your English listening skills while learning real history. Now, let's get started. Part 1. Early Life and Family. Karl Marx was born in 1818 in a small city called Trier in Germany. His family was not rich, but they lived a comfortable life. His father, Heinrich Marx, was a lawyer. He was a smart and kind man who loved books and ideas. His mother, Henriette, took care of the home and the children. Karl had 8 brothers and sisters. Life in the Marx family was full of learning and conversation. Karl's father wanted his children to get a good education. He believed that reading and thinking were very important. He often talked to Karl about justice, freedom, and human rights. These ideas later became the center of Karl's work. As a young boy, Karl was very curious. He asked many questions about why people had to work so hard and why some people were rich while others were poor. At school, Karl was a good student. He liked reading history, poetry, and philosophy. He was not afraid to share his opinion, even when others disagreed. His teachers saw that he had a strong mind and a love for learning. Sometimes he spent many hours reading books instead of playing outside. Trier, the city where Karl grew up, was quiet and beautiful. But behind this peace, there were problems. Many people worked long hours in factories and lived in poor conditions. Karl saw this reality and started to think about social unfairness. He wondered why life was so different for rich and poor people. His family also had to face some difficulties. Karl's father was born into a Jewish family, but he changed his religion to Christianity so that he could continue his job as a lawyer. In that time, Jews in Germany did not have equal rights. Karl learned from his father that sometimes people had to change or suffer because of unfair laws. This experience made him more sensitive to social problems later in life. At home, Karl's father was his biggest teacher. He taught him logic, languages, and how to write clearly. His mother was warm and caring, but she wanted Karl to be practical and find a good job one day. She often said that ideas were nice, but life also needed money. Karl respected his parents, but he was more interested in ideas than in business. When Karl was a teenager, he read many great writers, such as Goethe and Hegel. Their books made him think more deeply about life and society. He started to write poems and short essays. His father was proud of him, but sometimes worried that Karl was too serious and idealistic. By the time Karl finished high school, it was clear that he would study at the university. His family hoped he would become a lawyer, just like his father. But Karl had other dreams. He wanted to understand how the world worked and why there was so much inequality among people. That desire became the first step on his long journey, the journey from a curious student to a revolutionary thinker. Part 2: Student Years and Love for Learning. When Karl Marx finished high school, he moved to the city of Bonn to study at the university. His father wanted him to study law because it was a safe and respected job. Karl agreed at first, but he soon found law boring. He liked reading books about philosophy and history much more. At the University of Bonn, Karl was young, free, and full of energy. He joined clubs, met new people, and talked about ideas all the time. He liked to spend nights reading or debating with his friends. Sometimes, he even got in trouble because he stayed out too late or argued too loudly. His father was not happy about that, so he sent Karl to another school, the University of Berlin, hoping he would study more seriously there. Berlin was a big and exciting city. There, Karl met students who were interested in new ideas. They were not afraid to question old beliefs. They liked to talk about politics, religion, and the future of society. Karl loved this atmosphere. He began to read the works of great thinkers, like Hegel. Hegel's philosophy was difficult, but Karl was fascinated by it. He started to believe that ideas could change history. At that time, Karl also met a young woman named Jenny von Westphalen. She came from a rich family, and her father was an important official. Even though they were from different worlds, Karl and Jenny fell in love. Jenny was kind, intelligent, and supportive. She believed in Karl's dreams, even when they were not easy. Their love gave Karl strength and hope during the hard years that would come later. Karl spent long hours in the library. He read everything he could find: books about law, economics, philosophy, and literature. He wrote notes and tried to connect different ideas. Sometimes he forgot to eat or sleep because he was so focused on his studies. His classmates said that Karl could talk about any topic for hours. But Karl was not only a student of books, he was also a student of life. He walked around Berlin, watched how people lived, and listened to workers in the streets. He saw that many poor people had to work long hours for little money. These scenes made him think deeply about fairness and human rights. In the classroom, Karl began to question his teachers. He asked, "Why do some people have everything, while others have nothing?" Some professors liked his curiosity, but others thought He was too bold. Still, Karl continued to speak his mind. He wanted to understand the real problems of society, not just learn theories. His letters to Jenny from this time show a mix of love and passion for ideas. He wrote about books, politics, and his dreams for a better world. Jenny replied with warmth and encouragement. She told him to follow his heart and never stop learning. Their letters later became famous examples of love and friendship between two great minds. When Karl finished his studies, he received his doctorate in philosophy. His thesis was about two ancient Greek thinkers, but his real interest was the modern world. He wanted to find ways to make society more just and equal. He was young, full of energy, and ready to use his knowledge to change the world. His years as a student were not easy, but they were full of discovery. He learned how to think deeply, how to write clearly, and how to stand for his beliefs. These skills would guide him for the rest of his life. Karl Marx entered university as a curious boy. He left it as a man who believed that knowledge could transform the world. Part 3. Discovering the power of ideas. After finishing his studies, Karl Marx started to think about what he wanted to do with his life. He did not want to become a lawyer like his father. He wanted to write, think, and change the world with his ideas. At that time, Europe was full of new thoughts and debates. Many people were talking about freedom, equality, and the future of society. Karl wanted to join this conversation. He began working as a journalist. Writing gave him a way to share his opinions with others. He wrote articles about politics, the government, and the problems of poor people. He believed that writing could open people's eyes and make them think. Soon, his words started to attract attention. Some people agreed with him, but others, especially the government, did not like what he said. While working as a journalist, Karl met many people who wanted to change society. Some of them were workers, and others were young intellectuals who believed in socialism, the idea that people should share resources more fairly. These new friends helped Karl understand the life of the working class. He saw their struggles, their hunger, and their hope for a better future. During this time, Karl continued to study philosophy. He read about Hegel and other German thinkers. Hegel believed that history moved forward through conflict and change. Karl liked this idea, but he wanted to make it more practical. He thought that the main force behind history was not only ideas, but also the struggle between social classes, between rich and poor, owners and workers. This thought became one of the most important parts of his philosophy. He began to write about how society was built on economic power. He said that people's lives were shaped by their work and by who controlled money and production. For him, freedom was not just about speech or voting. It was also about having fair conditions to live and work. Karl's writing became stronger and more critical. He did not just describe problems, he also offered solutions. He argued that the system needed to change completely. He believed that workers should unite to create a fair society. His articles were powerful, but they also made him unpopular with the authorities. Soon, his newspaper was closed by his government, and he lost his job. Still, Karl did not give up. He moved to Paris, where he found more freedom to write and think. Paris was full of artists, writers, and revolutionaries. There, he met Friedrich Engels, a man who would become his lifelong friend and collaborator. Engels was also interested in the lives of workers and wanted to build a better world. The two men shared ideas, worked together, and supported each other through hard times. Engels had seen poverty in the factories of England, and he wrote about it in his book, The Condition of the Working Class in England. Karl read it carefully and was deeply moved. It gave him real examples of how workers suffered under capitalism. This confirmed his belief that change was necessary, not later, but soon. In Paris, Karl also started to meet groups of workers and activists. He listened to their stories and helped them express their struggles through writing. He became more than a thinker. He became a voice for the people. His ideas about equality and justice began to grow stronger and clearer. Karl was now sure about one thing: ideas had power. They could inspire people, unite them, and change history. He believed that when people understood the truth, they would no longer accept unfairness. This belief gave him purpose and courage. From this moment, Karl Marx was not just a writer or a philosopher. He was becoming a revolutionary. Part 4: Exile and Hard Times. After some time in Paris, Karl Marx became more famous, but also more dangerous in the eyes of the government. His articles about freedom and equality made many leaders angry. They thought he was trying to start a revolution. Because of this, Karl was forced to leave France. It was the beginning of a long period of exile. Karl and his wife Jenny moved from one country to another, always looking for safety and freedom. First, they went to Brussels in Belgium. Life there was a little easier. Karl continued to write and meet other thinkers. He started to study the economy more deeply. He wanted to understand why poverty existed, even when some people became very rich. In Brussels, Karl and Engels worked closely together. They met often to discuss ideas about politics and the economy. They believed that workers should unite and fight for better lives. Together, they started writing what would become one of the most famous books in history, the Communist Manifesto. While Karl was busy with his work, his personal life was full of challenges. He and Jenny had children, but they did not have much money. Karl tried to earn income through writing, but it was not enough. Many times, the family did not have food or warm clothes. Jenny sold her jewelry to buy bread, and pay rent. Even during these hard days, she stayed by Karl's side and believed in him. After a few years, the Belgian police also began to follow Karl. They worried that his ideas might cause problems. Once again, Karl had to leave. He and his family went to London, hoping to find peace. But London life was even more difficult. The city was big, cold, and expensive. The Marx family lived in a small, dark apartment. Sometimes they had no money for heating. They lost several of their children to sickness and hunger. Still, Karl never gave up. Every day he went to the British Museum Library to read and take notes. He studied history, politics, and economics for many hours. People who saw him said that he was always surrounded by piles of books and papers. Even when he was sick or hungry, he kept working. He said that understanding the truth was more important than comfort. His friend Engels helped him whenever he could. Engels had a job in England and sent money to Karl's family. Without his help, Karl might not have survived. Their friendship was strong and based on shared goals. They both dreamed of a fair world where workers could live with dignity. In London, Karl wrote many important articles and started to plan his biggest work, Das Kapital, Capital. In this book, he wanted to explain how money, work, and power were connected. He showed how workers created value, but owners took most of the profit. Writing this book took many years and a lot of energy. Despite his struggles, Karl remained hopeful. He believed that his ideas would one day help millions of people. He often said that ideas are like seeds. They might be small and quiet at first, but one day they can grow and change the world. Life in exile taught Karl many lessons. He learned what real poverty felt like, and he saw how unfair the world could be. These experiences made his writings more powerful and real. He no longer wrote only from theory, he wrote from life. Karl Marx and his family suffered greatly, but his spirit stayed strong. Even in the darkest times, he believed that knowledge and truth could lead to justice. Those long years of exile were not the end of his journey. They were the fire that made his ideas stronger than ever. Part 5. The Communist Manifesto and Marx's Legacy. In 1848, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels finished a small book that would change the world. It was called The Communist Manifesto. Even though it was short, it was powerful. It began with the famous line, "A specter is haunting Europe, the specter of communism." These words caught people's attention. The book talked about how society was divided into classes, the rich who owned everything, and the workers who had nothing but their labor. Marx and Engels wrote the book to explain their ideas clearly. They said that history was always a story of class struggle. In every age, one group had power, and another group had to fight for rights. They believed that one day, workers around the world would unite and build a fair society without kings, owners, or unfair rules. The manifesto called for change. It said that the workers, or proletarians, had the power to make history. Marx and Engels told them, "Workers of all countries, unite." This message was new and exciting. It gave poor people hope and a reason to believe in themselves. Many people began to read and discuss the book secretly in factories, homes, and small groups. However, not everyone liked the message. Governments in Europe saw the manifesto as a threat. They feared that workers would rise up and cause revolutions. Soon after the book was published, revolts began to appear in several countries. Marx was again blamed and forced to leave Belgium. Even so, his ideas had already started to spread across Europe. In London, Marx continued his work. He wrote more articles and planned new projects. He and Engels believed that understanding the economy was the key to understanding society. They studied how factories worked, how goods were made, and how workers were paid. From these studies, Marx began to write his great book, Das Kapital, which took him more than 20 years to finish. Das Kapital was not an easy book. It used many examples and long explanations. But it was full of new ideas about money, labor, and power. Marx showed how some people became rich by taking the value created by workers. He explained that this system, called capitalism, made a few people very powerful while most others stayed poor. He said that real freedom could only exist when workers controlled their own work and shared the results fairly. Even while living in poverty, Marx never stopped believing in his mission. He said that ideas could not be killed by hunger or fear. Engels continued to help him, both with money and with editing his writings. Their friendship remained strong until the end of Marx's life. The Communist Manifesto became one of the most read political texts in history. It inspired workers' movements in many countries and gave birth to new political parties. People who read it did not all agree with everything Marx said, but they could not ignore his vision. He had shown that society could be studied and changed, not just accepted, as it was. Even today, the manifesto is still studied and debated in schools, universities, and political groups. Some people see it as a dream of equality and justice. Others see it as a dangerous idea that led to revolutions and conflict. But no one can deny its power. It changed how people thought about work, class, and society. Karl Marx did not live to see the full effect of his work, but his ideas became part of history. The Communist Manifesto was not just a book, it was the beginning of a movement. It showed that words can be stronger than weapons, and that ideas, once written, can travel across borders and centuries. Part 6. The Final Years and Global Impact. Karl Marx spent the last part of his life in London. He was often sick and tired, but he never stopped working. His health became weak because of long hours in cold rooms, poor food, and stress. Still, he continued to read, write, and think about the future of society. His wife Jenny was always by his side, taking care of him and helping him with his papers. The Marx family lived very modestly. They did not have much money, but their home was always full of books and ideas. Many young thinkers and workers visited Marx to ask for advice. They called him the old man, and they respected his wisdom. He was happy to talk with them and share his experiences. He wanted the next generation to continue the fight for justice and equality. During these years, Marx continued to work on his most important book, Das Kapital. The first volume had already been published, but he wanted to finish the next parts. Unfortunately, his health became worse, and he could not complete them all. After his death, Engels used Marx's notes to publish the other volumes. Thanks to this, Marx's work was not lost. Life was hard for Karl and his family. Jenny died before him, and her death broke his heart. He also lost several of his children. Despite this sadness, he never gave up on his beliefs. He once wrote, "If we have chosen the position of truth, we must stay faithful to it, whatever happens." These words show his strong spirit and courage. In March 1883, Karl Marx died quietly in London. Only a small group of friends came to his funeral. Engels gave a short speech, saying, "His name will live on through the ages, and so will his work." Those words were true. After his death, Marx's ideas began to grow even more powerful. In the years that followed, people around the world started reading his books. Workers in Europe, Asia, and America used his ideas to demand better pay and working conditions. Many political movements were born from his thoughts. Some countries even tried to build governments based on Marx's ideas, although not all of them followed his vision in the right way. Marx's influence reached far beyond politics. His way of thinking changed how people studied history, economics, and sociology. He showed that social problems could be explained and improved through reason and action. Even people who did not agree with him respected his intelligence and his passion for truth. Today, more than 140 years after his death, Karl Marx remains one of the most famous thinkers in the world. His name is still discussed in classrooms, books, and debates. Some people see him as a hero of the poor. Others see him as a man with dangerous ideas. But everyone agrees that he changed how we look at society and power. Karl Marx's journey, from a curious student to a revolutionary thinker, shows the power of education, courage, and ideas. He believed that knowledge could make people free and that the world could become fairer if people worked together. His story reminds us that even one person armed only with words and passion, can leave a mark on history.